Shalom, guys. Welcome to another episode of Heaven, Hell, and a Life After Death. Today, we're going to be looking at the two verses, which are 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8, and Philippians chapter 1, verse 23. Both these verses basically saying the same thing. That's why I wanted to include both of them in this one video for us to look at the proper context and what Paul is exactly saying. But Christians will use these verses to prove that when we die, we are literally present with the Lord in that same exact sequence. So we're going to take a look at what these verses exactly say. So here in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8, it says, "But we are of good courage and prefer rather to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord." And Philippians chapter 1, verse 23 says, "But I am hard pressed from both directions, having the desire to depart and to be with Christ, for that is a very much better." All right. Now, for us to look at the proper context of 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8, we should start in the very beginning of the chapter. So verses 1 to 3 say, "For we know that if the earthly tent, which is our house, is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For indeed, in this house we groan, longing to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven, inasmuch as we, having put it on, will not be found naked." Now, here is the context of what it's exactly saying. So, our earthly tent here is our body. So, when we die, we will get a building from God or a perfect body from God, as Philippians chapter 3, verse 21 brings out. We groan because our bodies are corrupted by sin, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 22, and dwell in heaven means to be with God on earth, for Jerusalem descends from heaven, Revelation 21, verse 2. So as we are still in our current bodies right now, these are our sinful bodies, which are corrupted by sin, which will then lead us to death, right? So this is what he talks about of a tent that we are in, right? Just as Messiah tabernacled among us, we also have a corrupted body right here. This is our tabernacle that we're currently in. And notice how he says we have a house made from human hands, but we will get a building. All right. A building is better constructed than a house. That's why Paul uses this type of language here. So we will have this building, a perfect body, basically to resemble Yeshua's body. That's what we want, right? That's the end goal, right? To leave our bodies and to get a perfect one. That is what the Bible teaches. Now we're going to continue. We're going to read verse 4 and 5. "For indeed, while we are in this tent, we groan, being burdened, because we do not want to be unclothed, but to be clothed, so that what is mortal will be swallowed up by life. Now he who prepared us for this very purpose is God, who gave us to the Spirit as a pledge." And here's the context again. "We groan and hate the sinful, corrupted body that we have inherited. Swallowed up by life means that sin corrupted this body, which will eventually lead to death. God has prepared a body for us that we will receive after the resurrection." And you can find that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 50 to 57. And again, it's Paul is still emphasizing the longing, the idea of living in a perfect world, which we live. We read about this in Revelation 20, 21, and 22. When we get to the end of Revelation, when all is revealed, when all is done, when the New Jerusalem descends from heaven onto the earth will be a perfect place. The earth will be filled with righteous people who will have perfect bodies, a perfect mind, a willingness and a yearning to worship the one true God. That is the end goal, right? And that's what Paul is just alluding to. So when Paul is making these references, he's skipping all the steps that's in between, right? He's jumping basically from Revelation chapter 1 all the way to 20. But just as there's a lot within Revelation in between chapter 2 and chapter 19, there's also a lot more. But Paul here is skipping to it, looking at the end goal. Okay, that's what he's doing here. And chapter 6, verse 6 and 7. Therefore, being always of good courage, and knowing that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. Okay, so here, Paul here is encouraging those to keep fighting the good fight. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 12. And to know that one day we will get perfect bodies and forever be with the Lord. While we still have our imperfect bodies, the Lord isn't with us, but when we have our perfect bodies, he is. Paul here is talking about the resurrection and the judgment. And again, this is just Paul looking at the end, right? Because there still has to be a resurrection. There still has to be a judgment, right? As Paul also mentions, there's going to be a resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. So when we're resurrected, then there's going to be this judgment. Not when we die, we're just going to get our new bodies right away, right? Yeshua still has to come. People who have died yesterday are still in the grave. They're still in Sheol. They have not received the promises. Just as Hebrews chapter 11 brings out, these people have not received the promise. So has our friends and families who have passed away yesterday or the day after, whatever. They are still waiting the resurrection. They're still waiting for the perfect bodies that they're going to get. So none of this has happened yet. Again, Paul is talking about the future, not a sequential event timeline. Now we're going to get to verse 8. We are of good courage, I say, and prefer rather to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord. Paul says good courage, meaning he's talking to believers who will one day get a perfect body to keep their hopes alive, right? Paul is referring to the people who struggle to be a Christian, who struggle living this life. He says, keep enduring, keep going on, right? And when we do get the perfect body, we will be with God. Paul here is talking about a future event, not literally when we die, when we be in heaven. And this is just it. Paul is talking about the future. Paul knows his name is in the book of life. That's why Paul can make these claims. And I don't think there's any Catholic, Orthodox, or Protestant Christian out there that would disagree with that statement. How the Father, through Yeshua, has used Paul tremendously throughout the early congregations, throughout the early churches. Paul knows his name is in the book of life. Paul knows he will be resurrected. Paul knows that he will have a positive judgment and he will receive everlasting life. So that's just what Paul is talking about. He's waiting for the end goal, right? It's like if a basketball team starts off a season and like they know they're going to win, right? They know they're going to dominate. They won the past 2 years. They're going to go for their three-peat. They know they're going to win. He's like, I can't wait to hold that trophy. Well, hold on. Because you can't just walk in and you're not going to be given that trophy, right? You have an 82 game season to play, and then you have the playoffs. You have to win every 4 out of 7 games. So there is a road to go to get the trophy. But just as someone who knows they're going to win and they're the best team, they're going to get the trophy. Same idea with Paul. Paul knows that there is obviously a cycle, and it should not be taken literal what he says, but he knows he will inherit everlasting life. And we're going to continue on. So now we're going to look at Philippians chapter 1, verse 23 in context. So we don't have to go too far with this one. We can go back to just verse 21 and 22. All right. So, for to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Okay. But if I am to live on in the flesh, this will mean fruitful labor for me, and I do not know which one to choose. So here, this is what Paul is saying. Paul is talking about that if we live a Christ-like life, then we will gain everlasting life. He talks about the struggle that comes with living a Christian life, right? And this comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8 through 10, right? Now, verse 23, but I am hard pressed from both directions, having the desire to depart to be with Christ, for that is much better. So here, Paul is saying that he is being pulled in all directions, as in he enjoys preaching the gospel and bringing others to Christ, but he also longs to receive his perfect body to live on a perfect earth with Christ. Again, not literally dying to be in heaven with him, but after the resurrection and judgment. Because again, there's more things that have to go on. But Paul here is constantly being persecuted. If you read all the letters, he's constantly yelling at the congregations. He basically signed up to be a giant babysitter to really start this new identity of being Jewish now, but also believing in Jesus. And now he's bringing other people into the covenant, which is a lot of work, which is very stressful. He's going out, he's being hated, he's being persecuted, and he's literally signing up for a giant babysitting service. This is a lot for Paul. And that's why a lot of times he's like, I just want to give up and throw the towel in, but he knows he can't. Paul was a great man. He knew he had to keep going on, and he had a lot of people to save and to share the gospel, for he knows that's what his mission was. So Philippians, again, right here. So depart is interesting because this comes from the Strong's Greek 360, and it says the verb analu means to loose a ship from its moorage, weigh anchor, or depart. Here, AMG explains that that this was used by the ancient Greeks to indicate losing an anchor of a ship in order to set sail from a port. All right. Second Maccabees also uses this word in Second Maccabees chapter 9, verse 1, about the time as it happened, Anachius had retreated or unload in disorder from the region of Persia. So it's interesting here. So Paul is referencing he wants to depart because this is an anchor on Paul, right? And this is very difficult for Paul. This is hard. He wants to loosen that anchor and just be done, right? Imagine carrying an anchor your entire life, mission, preaching the gospel. It's going to suck. So that's all that Paul's saying here. He's not literally talking about that he will literally be with Christ or anything like that. There are many steps that have to be taken before you can inherit everlasting life with the perfect body. But Paul knows he's going to make it. So that's why Paul is just basically venting to us, man, I can't wait to get there. So, and hopefully we will be there with him to experience that too. So, thanks so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, write a comment. Let me know what you think of the video. And with that being said, shalom.